What is history?
Other important questions to consider includes what are historical debates, who are the historians, what are the aims and purposes of history, how has history been constructed and recorded over time, and why have approaches to history changed over time. So Herodotus lived between 484 to 430 BC. He wrote the book The Histories in 440 BC. He was one of the first to collect data from interviews using local oral traditions. A.P. Fell stated that he consulted witnesses and examined monuments whenever possible. His book, The Histories, was meant to be read out loud, according to Hartog, who stated that even though he is the father of history, he is not really a historian, as in it was all for recounting of grand epic narratives. Felling stated that he wanted to recount them, the Persian War, as Homer had recounted the Trojan War. Arthur Marwick, who lived between 1936 to 2006, was an empiricist, a left-wing social and cultural historian. He wrote the book The Nature of History, second edition in 1981, which was a positive affirmation of the role of history, and this was a rebuttal to the errors of postmodernity, as in postmodernism, and believing history to be subjective. Marwick emphasized new ways of recording history, such as works of literature, film, and painting, which were seen as important documents of the past. Marwick was critical of postmodernism, as aforementioned, in which he emphasized that it was a menace to serious historical study. He was also a critic of Marxism, since Marxists stressed too much on the meta-narrative of a oppressor-oppressed narrative. Advances in sciences. Marwick finally talked about the positives of the advances in the sciences, in which he stated, new disciplines such as statistics and psychology have been given greater emphasis in historical analysis. Finally, I'll talk about Marc Bloch, 1886 to 1944. He was a French Alsatian Jew and professor of medieval history and economic history. He was also a modernist and witnessed the First World War.
Annals
Of Economic and Social History in 1992. It was a scholarly journal and insisted on the importance of all levels of society. The Historian's Craft, 1963, Manchester University Press, emphasized Historiae Totale, or total history, which studied the structural and social conditions that led to historical events. He stated that history is, in its essentials, the science of change. The conditions from which they spring are never identical. Mentalities was where Marc Bloch refused to exclude psychology from history, and in chapter 4 of the aforementioned book, the historians have a power in making moral judgments about the past. Marc Bloch stated, where calculation is impossible, we are obliged to employ suggestion. So ultimately, in retrospect, what is history? Well, according to Herodotus, it is a narrative that is meant to be read out loud. Obviously, great men, great deeds. Marwick believed that history is just the recounting of events of the past and denies postmodernism and Marxism, and that the sciences and new mediums such as literature, film, and painting are important in the recording, in the documentation of that past. And Marc Bloch believed that all parts of the society of the past should be explored in a historie totale, as well as the mentalities, how people perceived and lived in that time period. But yeah, this obviously runs into further questions of what exactly can we use history for? What makes it so important? Why should we be spending our efforts in documenting the past and so forth? I'll leave that question up to you. What do you think?